Hello there, I'm Dave from Dyno Bike. Today we have one of the new Yamaha R7 bikes here. It's a was a lamb's bike. We have de-restricted this one. What we're doing to it today is fitting a Cordona quick shifter. So I wanted to just take you through the process of fitting it. It's pretty straightforward, something that you can do at home if you've got a few basic tools and you have some basic knowledge on and experience, of course. You should be able to manage it on your own. So a little bit about the Cordona quick shifter as opposed to an OEM shifter. The difference between the two is that the OEM shifter has moving parts inside the sensor unit that would go down here. They are also spring loaded. So the problem that creates for a quick shifter is that obviously with moving parts there's a switch working in there, and with switches, if they're constantly doing that all the time, they generate some heat. When they generate some heat, it does tend to change the voltage or current going through the system to the ECU, and it can have an effect on how much pressure is required to get the quick shifter to engage so that you can change to the next gear. I wouldn't say that's always the case, but it is one problem associated with them. The second thing is they have moving parts, so the moving parts can and do wear. They're not sealed units, they can't be because there's moving parts in there. So sometimes they can get water into them and they corrode and then they don't work very well at all. And of course they're spring loaded, so the feel that you get through them is often not as good as something that is just a solid shaft. So as compared to a Cordona quick shifter, which is not all of that, it is a solid unit, uses a strain gauge technology. It's a little microchip inside that sensor that is looking at how much pressure is being applied to the lever, and it then sends a signal to the ECU to kill the engine for a brief period of time while you change into the next gear. Because there's no moving parts, you don't get a large movement in heat and of course resistance and change in current flow. So the consistency of the lever generally tends to stay the same as what it always is, whether it's hot or cold. There's also no moving parts inside there, and it is a completely sealed unit, so can't get anything inside there to corrode anything or damage any parts. Because there's no moving parts, there isn't any wear and tear on it. And they're just a much more reliable, consistent and precise system to use. They're used by most people in race application who are serious about having stuff that is reliable. They're used by KTM, for example. Most of the superbike guys will use a strain gauge shifter, and often they'll use the Cordona version of that. Some of the Moto 2 and Moto 3 guys also use Cordona shifters, so they are fairly widely used amongst race teams where they need accuracy and precision. So anyway, I will get cracking now, pull the Cordona shifter out, show you that in the box, and we'll start the process of fitting it to this bike. Right, Cordona quick shifter for Yamaha R7. Just a quick note here, it does not fit the MT-07 if you're thinking that, oh, it should fit the same because it's the same blah blah blah. It doesn't fit, it's different, so don't waste your money buying one thinking that it will, because it won't. This is specific to the Yamaha R7 only at this time. Okay, so if you order one, this is what you'll get. Let's open it, see what's in the box. Right, so we get, there's the sensor, a little pod there for adjusting sensitivity, and inside there is a manual. I will just open that for you. Right, so there's some instructions in there. Tells you how to adjust it, how to install it, basically how to install it. The installation is not specific to this model, it is generic, but anyway, you've got this little pod here. Included in those instructions are instructions to adjust the sensitivity of your switch so that you can make it less sensitive or more sensitive depending on how heavy or light your foot is. Right, so that's that. Harness goes with it. Obviously there's a little there's 3 6mm bolts or 6mm studs there. One of them is a left hand thread, and one of these nuts is also a left hand thread. That rod is specific to the Yamaha R7. It does fit, it does not need any trimming, so you shouldn't have any dramas with that. And of course there's our little mini harness. One side is for 12 volts, the other is for the quick shifter sensor, and they are marked accordingly. That one there is for the quick shifter, and that one there is, I should say, I can't read it from here, it is 12 volts. Pretty straightforward. Here we go, that's what's in the box. Right, so I have taken this, the pillion seat off. That's pretty straightforward. Turn the key and it unlocks, pull it off. The 2 buttons here that's holding this cover. I'm going to get it under that cover because the seat's held on by 2 bolts that are down the bottom here. So I just push these little buttons in like that to release them. They're like little plastic rivets, those. Pop them out like so. Careful not to lose them, and just give it a little wiggle, pull it up, that's out. 2 bolts are right here. Do these 2 bolts. Alright, seat is off. Right, so the next job is to get this cover off. One screw there. There's a bigger one here. And then there's another little plastic button there. Screw there, and there's also a plastic button under here. Take that off. This off, pop that off there, pull that out. So now that's off. Right, so the next cover that's got to come off is this one here. There's a screw there, and there's more of these little plastic rivets there, one there, and one at the front. So I'll take those off first. And then we just slide this cover forward, it'll release, come out. Alright, so what we're looking for is 2 plugs. There's one here, that one, grey plug, and up here there's a, I don't know if you can see that, there's a white plug right there, and that's got nothing on the other side of it, it's not connected, or that one hasn't got anything connected to it either. They're both blanked off. The one at the front, the white one, is 12 volts. That's going to power the Cordona quick shifter, and this one here is the trigger for it. So take that off, another one off. Now, there's our quick shifter. Quick shifter comes with everything you need to connect it up. So we've got this piece here. These two are going to here and here. They're actually labelled, so you can see one there says power and the other one says QS. So it's pretty hard to mix them up. Be careful because they will both go on either plug. So just make sure you're the one that says power. You want that to the one right at the front, the white plug connector right up the front there. The one that's to trigger the quick shift, or the trigger for the ECU, is the grey one. That's that one there, and that one there is QS. It goes there like that. So it says QS, goes to the grey. That says power. That one goes up the front there, like so. Okay, and then we just tuck that in there. We can pop that cover back on when we're finished here, that is. There's a little tie in there, can tie it into there just to lock him into place. Can go in there like that. And then can get our quick shifter sensor just down here. We've got this little plug here, he plugs into there. Alright, and then what I do is just drop that sensor down through here, in behind the frame. Like so. And run it down to where it's going to go on the gear lever linkage, and then you can tie this in anywhere. You can tie it in underneath this cover if you want, or you can just tie it in wherever you're comfortable with. Happy days. Right, gear lever. We're going to replace this gear lever with the Cordona one. That is this one here. We can have that like that if you wish, or we could have that like that. Okay, do not cut this in half and put that in the middle. That is a big no-no. You don't do that. One end or the other end. So I'll pull this off now. But before I do that, we want to measure from there to the ground, so that when we put it back together we get the same height, and we don't have to muck around, measure, getting on the bike and fitting it to suit the rider's foot position. Write it down on a piece of paper, because I guarantee you'll forget it. Why don't we go to the centre of the peg. This one is measuring 23 centimetres, sorry, not 23, 32 centimetres, or 32.5, or 325 millimetres. 325. So when we reassemble it, we'll measure it again and make sure that's 325. Right, now we take this off. Now remember with these, you've got one end is a left hand thread, the other end is a right hand thread, so don't try to turn it the wrong way. Or if you're turning it one way and it doesn't seem to be loosening off, you're turning it the wrong way. And this one looks like the bottom end is a left hand thread. Okay, just before we go any further, another little point to make sure you're aware of. We've got 3 of these rods, 6mm by 1 thread. One of them is a left-hand thread, and the other 2, being these 2, are both conventional right-hand threads. Right, that's point 1. Point 2, this sensor will accept a left and a right-hand thread on both sides. It's what we call a magic thread. And just to prove that to you, I'm going to take that there and I'm going to screw the right hand thread in there. Goes in there like that. Happy days. Now, if for whatever reason we want either one of those ends to be a left hand thread, I can take this left hand thread one and turning it that way. Right, it's now left hand thread. So remember that. Our left hand thread in this case is actually going to go at the bottom of this rod here. Well, we're not using that rod, we're using it at the bottom. So this here is also a left and a right hand thread, but it is not a magic thread, right? I know that this end here is a left hand thread, right? Which means that this other end here, this one, is a right hand thread. So because my original shift rod has got a left hand thread at the foot peg end, I have to put my left hand thread on this down at this end. And these 2 ends here can both be right hand threads. Happy days. Right, next point of order when assembling this, when putting these threaded rods into the sensor, do not turn it all the way down and bottom the rod out in the bottom of the sensor and then lock the nut up. Do not do that. Turn it down by hand all the way till it bottoms out, and then turn the rod back about a turn and then lock the nut on, so that effectively in the bottom of this hole here there will be a little air gap. Right, the rod will not be touching the bottom of it. Why do we do that? Because if it's touching the bottom of it, this is a strain gauge. The gauge of the sensor will not work correctly, and you'll be ringing me up saying that it doesn't work, and possibly you will damage this to the point that it won't work at all. We have to throw it away and put a new one on it. Please, I'll say it again, do not turn this threaded rod all the way in and bottom it out and then lock the nut. Okay, same goes on this end. When you're screwing this end in, same deal, turn it all the way in till it bottoms out by hand, then turn it back about 1 turn, lock the nut onto it, you're done. Okay? Right, next. So, when you've finished assembling your Cordona shifter and rod, it should look something like what you're looking at there now. You will use the nuts that are on the original shift rod as well as the one that is supplied in the kit, or in most cases you will. I actually use just one at this end here. I've only got the one nut on that, and I've shortened the threaded rod at this end probably 5mm, so I can screw this all the way down and just lock it into the sensor permanently, because we don't need to have that turning and then that turning and that turning should we need to adjust the footrest height. And when I get it back and assembled on the bike, I will show you how this actually works to give you quick and easy adjustment should the footrest not be in the right position. So let's assemble it and then I'll show you that little bit. Right, another important note. I've screwed this on here, assembled it on the spline here. Very important to make sure that this center point, if you draw a line down here, an imaginary line there, and one down there through where from the point of which this rod is connected, and the center line of this foot peg down and through there, you want these to be in line. You don't want this one down here and that one down there or up there somewhere. They've got to be in line, otherwise they're not. then you'll find that you've got a problem shifting in one direction or the other. So you won't have a smooth, consistent shift. Mine's pretty good, I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to measure this up. See if I got my height right on the foot bag, on the gear lever that is. So it's saying 320, we wanted 325. Alright, so we've locked this in place so this doesn't turn. And this, I've left the nuts loose. So if you watch that lever as I turn the shaft, you can see it goes up and down, right? Without interfering with this. Okay, so that gives us some adjustment so that we can get that lever spot on the money. That is now at, oh, look at that lucky guess, 325, which is what we wrote down earlier. Now we just want to lock these up, lock all the nuts, put my bolt in there. It's done. Now we can go and test.